Next, we're gonna talk about Nike. So Nike's had a bit of a rough couple weeks.
Yeah.
During the for context, during the Boston Marathon, Nike had these large out of home basically displays at their different stores. And so the one in Boston for the Boston Marathon was that like runners are celebrated, but walkers are tolerated. And so it did not go down well. Absolutely did not go down well. And in addition to the outcry from just the public in general, there were also a lot of competitor brands who tried to have more, like purposely more inclusive messaging to basically combat this. And so it wound up being taken down pretty quickly. But there was also some people who spoke up about some activations that Nike was doing in the UK at a park that had a very kind of similar kind of notation, basically saying like you're not here to have a walk in the park or something to that extent. And so it's showing, once again, social identity theory. So there was a lot of people who loved it that were like, "Ooh, it's edgy," and like, "Why are we always so offended by things?" And there was other people who were like, "No, seriously, like, what if you walk because you just had surgery, or what if you walk because you have a disability, or what if you're walking because like that's what you can do? Like, why are we using this kind of language?" And so it became quite polarizing online. The usual talking heads came out to kind of give their whole spiel on things. But for me, like I said earlier, a lot of what I'm thinking about now is coming from a lens of sociology and how do we see things. And it just becomes very clear that Nike is tapping into this market of runners to basically say, like, y'all are the in group, the out group are the walkers. They're not like you. They're not as ambitious. They're not as driven. They're not going to do it the way that you're going to do it. And kind of throwing shade on them. It's like we want the runners and the walkers like, yeah, fine, you're here. And so, from a sociological standpoint, it's really fascinating to see how people are reacting to it because it does come down to do you immediately, whether you realize it or not, associate with the out crowd? Or do you see it as an in crowd, out crowd thing at all? And the people who immediately saw it, whether they were able to verbalize what that actual feeling was or not, tended to be anti the ad. I even had one of my friends after I had commented on it on LinkedIn to basically be like, hey, I was actually near this and I saw the thing and I felt some kind of way about it, but I wasn't sure what that feeling was exactly, and that's what it was. And so I think if we look at things from a sociological lens, I think it's really important because Nike has this going back to heritage, Nike has a heritage of this aspirational brand, but not in the aspirational way of like, hey, you could have a Chanel bag, but in the aspirational way of like, you could do it. Like just do it. Like just fulfill your dream. Like just go out there, just practice, just do the work. Like you could be an athlete. Anyone can be an athlete. And so for it to go from this aspirational athletic dream that anyone can kind of think about and be a part of to, yeah, walkers, you're not it, it's very interesting, and I think Nike learned a really valuable lesson that, like, yes, you could be edgy, but there's gonna be consequences, and yes, people are talking about you, but it isn't necessarily what people are gonna wanna say, and so it's very it's a fantastic case study in how humans react to other people.
Yeah. I so I have a couple thoughts.
Yeah,
And it's not necessarily that I disagree.
uh-huh.
It's more that I don't think that marketing needs to be the same across the board for everything. And I think for
I agree with
this
that.
particular situation, given the context that it did take place at the Boston Marathon, which is one of the top marathons in the world, you have to be at a certain level to make it there. This was an out of office like campaign that was meant for the runners. And yes, one can quibble that what, everything that's out of office can now be digital anyway. Um, that like, even if it was meant for this particular audience, that, the fact that it did find its way online and get the backlash there, of course that was going to happen, especially for a brand as big as, Nike and all that. The other thing is, Nike right now is just facing a lot of where they're not people's favorite brand anymore.
Yeah.
Like before they used to be like given so much more, sway because they had, they were that favorite brand, right? They're the
Mhm.
Jordan, like, they were the top shoe for everything. And then now people have more options. So like it seems as if they're trying to find their way, both in terms of like how they're marketing, but then also who they're marketing to.
Mhm.
And the third thing is that I saw it more as like yes, anybody can do it, but it takes a certain type of person
Mhm.
to get to this, level, which is what we or what I appreciate from their ads that they do with like art with sports stars, right?
Mhm,
I mean, the Rory McIlroy one, right, where it's like, when he just won the Masters again, the big thing there is like, we're celebrating, Rory like reaching this, second milestone, after winning the Grand Slam, last year, and it takes a certain person to just do it, right?
mhm.
Um and so I think they were trying to go after that, like the aspiration of like, you do have to, it is possible, but you have to work your ass off to do it.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's a message that's flying very well right now because
It's
it seems
not.
everything is just so fucking hard that I don't need a marketing team to be telling me that I'm not working hard enough, you know?
But that I agree with, actually, I don't disagree with anything you've said. I think that we are at a very interesting point in marketing right now because between just AI, consumer consciousness being at like an all-time high, like
Mhm,
everyone can spot an ad a mile away. People can spot a Nike ad immediately. There's just this social awareness of all of these moving pieces. So the ads that would have worked 5 years ago will get scrolled past today because it's like, I already know
mhm,
what you're selling me. I already know. I've already figured it out.
mhm,
And so I think there's that. And then I think what you said is really great where it's the like, yes, you got to work your ass off, but there's a way to say like you can absolutely do it, but you got to give it 110%. I
mhm.
think there's a difference between like you got to give it 110% and I see you lazy ass. I see you walking. Like, why did we go there? Like, why are the walkers
Yeah.
catching strays?
Yeah.
And so I think that, but and I'm also glad that you brought up like the out of home versus it showed up on social. I think that that is a perspective that marketers need to be hyper aware of, is that you have the opportunity for 360 distribution of your content.
Mhm.
Like ideally you want it to anyway. You want your
Yeah.
out of
I mean,
home to
the
be
best out of
screenshot and put
home,
on there. Yeah,
right?
the best out of home winds up doing better on
Mhm.
social than it does in
Yeah.
out of home just because like anyone can see it. Like
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
creates open access.
Mhm.
And so I think it's a mixture of like wanting to be edgy and wanting to do like an edgier version of their messaging to a population that is like, why you gotta be mean? Like, why you gotta? And I think if they had like tweaked it just a little bit, like just a little bit, it would have been better. But it's just, I think we're also just like hyper burned out and hyper negative. And I
Mhm.
think the things that I love from Nike are not the things that make me feel bad. They're the things that make me feel like, you know what? If I did wake up at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, maybe I could be something special, but I'm not going to do it because I'm a lazy ass. But if I did
Yeah.
and showed up every day, like aspirational positive versus
Yeah.
aspirational negative, I think that we are all looking for like the good stuff. Like I think if Artemis 2 taught us anything, is that I want to believe in the human spirit. I
Mhm.
wanna believe that humanity can do great things, and then when all the astronauts spoke about their experience, every single one of them was humble.
Mhm.
They are all smarter than me, they've all outworked me, they've all like, they have literally lapped me and the moon, but they would never come across as condescending, and I think
Yeah.
that's the miss, is like, you can absolutely inspire people without being condescending and making them feel like they're lesser than. Like, they're gonna
Mhm.
feel lesser than compared to an astronaut anyway, but
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
I didn't feel like that. It made me think of my hero, Sally Ride. It made me think of like, oh,
Mhm,
I
mhm,
remember
mhm.
little Christina wanting a telescope when she was 10 years old. Like
Mhm.
that little girl watched the Artemis too. I
Yeah.
think that's what we need. And I think that's what Nike needs to get back to, is like aspirational in a warm and fuzzy way of like these superhumans can do
Mhm,
these
mhm,
things. These
mhm.
athletes that have given their lives for their sport are able to do these great things. And you're not a horrible person because you didn't do it, but like look at what they were able to do because they put themselves forward. I think that aspirational nature in a
Yeah.
positive and wholesome way is honestly what we all need right now. I think we all need like a
I mean,
warm
I've
digital
been
hug.
talking about that for a while now, right? I have my, Monsters Inc. theory, which is,
Mhm.
we got to start making people pissed off and sad and, all those negative feelings and move them
Yeah.
over to like laughing and joy and everything. And then the latest one is just like this competency porn, which is like people
Yes.
want to see people do
Yes.
really well at what they're doing and be good at it, and be inspired by that. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of what they missed here. The other thing that kind of sucked, which is funny that it happened a week later and not the same week, because then for sure it would have made it even worse, is that the London Marathon that just happened, there's two men that ran a sub 2 hour marathon for the first time ever, breaking records. And the shoes that they were wearing are Adidas shoes. So it kind of shows that like, okay, but Nike, you're not that girl either. Like you're not the one that's helping runners reach these, high
Yeah.
levels, right? Um, I will say though, they did kind of like, um, turn it around a little bit by being like, "Hey, congratulations to these runners and to Adidas for like this, human achievement," right? And that was like the first time I was like, "Ha, you got it. You got the fact that like you can congratulate other people,
Yep.
other brands, and still, bring it back to yourself, but not make it negative." So if they do head in that direction, I think there is more room for, people to not be pissed off at them
Yes.
for like making these mistakes. But it does take them, continuing on in that direction. But it does show that they recognize that, it was a problem. I do think there's a world where that messaging could have worked if they had started going in that direction a little bit before. For them to switch to just kind of being more exclusive and like trying to keep people out is jarring when like the messaging last year was like anybody can do it, you just have to work hard, like, go out there and do it, just wear Nike or whatever. So it's like you kind of have to ramp up into like a complete,
Yeah.
180 of the messaging that you're sending. And that's also like a thing that I think they could have worked on before to be dropping, that like change because it's true. I don't expect that I will be able to run a marathon if I'm not out there, doing the work to do it.
Yeah.
But there's a way to say it and be, to be marketing to that in group.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the in group also appreciated that messaging either,
It
which
didn't.
is why, yeah, most people kind of just were like, well, you're on your own.
Well, runners are also a very interesting breed, and so I have friends who, like, do distance running. Walk or run, if you're there and you're
Mhm,
doing it, they will treat you like a fellow warrior. There's a
mhm,
reason why, like, there's always someone that is passing out near the end, and people will stop and slow their own time. That
mhm,
happened in Boston too, like, there were 2 guys that, like, found this one guy, and they completely messed up their race time, but they helped him cross the finish line. Like, there's a camaraderie there that I think they forgot.
mhm,
Like, we like, unless you're there to win the whole thing, you're gonna like, you don't care. You're not gonna be looking down on other people. You want it, and honestly, most runners, they wanna beat themselves.
mhm,
Like, they're always talking about their personal best. They're not talking about the next person, and I think that that's
mhm.
really important to note.
Yeah, no, I think that's super super interesting.
Yeah, so the biggest lesson for me is you really need to have a core understanding of what makes people love you.
Mhm,
That's a huge thing. So if you are a beloved brand, it's very easy to think that you're just gonna you can coast and like forever be loved. When you're up there, now you're on a pedestal and people can't wait for you to make a mistake. If any other brand had done it, it wouldn't have gotten nearly as much fanfare, but it's Nike and Nike's not supposed to miss. So when
mhm,
Nike misses, it becomes something that everyone talks about. Love it,
mhm,
hate it, it's too edgy, it's not edgy enough, all of the things. And so I think Nike has to remember its responsibility. It has to listen to its audience. It has to understand its ICP. And it has to come from a place of like, you're Nike. You can create really good work that isn't condescending, that isn't dismissive, that isn't alienating. And so there's a way to create that aspirational content that taps straight into the in group without making people feel othered. And so I think especially with runners, like I said, there's a camaraderie there. I wouldn't mess with that. And so I think just remember that we as humans, like you said, like between the Monsters Inc., but also the competence porn, we want to celebrate people who do good work. Like if I've learned anything over the past couple years is that we all crave a meritocracy, even though there isn't any apparently anymore. Like we want one. So
mhm,
we love celebrating people who work really hard, who are doing great things, who are breaking records. Like we love that stuff. But we don't want those people or the brands that support those people to be making us feel less than because we didn't so like there's a way to inspire us without us making us feel dumb or lazy or
mhm.
stupid.
Agreed. Yeah. I'll say that my lesson is if you're gonna, create a campaign around this, and have that be like a message that you want to put out there. You either have to make sure it's gonna, work out, or B, you better stick to it. I think part of it is the fact that they did take it down. They took it down very quickly, which means like they weren't 100% about it, right?
Mhm.
And if, that like doubt shows that like you weren't behind it in the first place, um and to do it on such a big stage, like the Boston Marathon, to test out new messaging in that way is kind of wild to me.
Yeah.
But I do like that, they seem to have turned it around, a week later for, the London Marathon to then celebrate that human achievement. So it seems like they did learn a lesson. I'll be curious
Right.
to see what they do going forward.
I'm very interested to see what they do for the World Cup. That's gonna be a big
Oh, yeah,
stage for
yeah, yeah.
them. There's gonna be a lot going on. There's already a lot of trouble with,
Mhm.
like, fan fests and permits and all the things, so
Yeah.
the World Cup's gonna be messy anyway. I think it's gonna be a huge
Mhm.
opportunity for Nike to step up and do a lot of really cool things, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, Adidas has kind of taken this the London Marathon. They announced the shoe, right, which is gonna be like $500, which is insane, but it's a limited run, which, shows it's not for everybody because it's not, right?
Well, they love Adidas. They love Adidas in the UK. I mean, they call it
Mhm.
Adidas, but
Yeah, yeah.
they like an Adidas Samba, like every time I go to
Uh-huh.
London, I see
Mhm.
hundreds of them on the street.
Mhm,
Like they
mhm.
love Adidas over there. So it also makes sense for the placement.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And then I saw that they released dog jerseys
Mhm.
for the World Cup teams. So, I expect that those are gonna be making the rounds, especially here with, Americans who love their dogs.
Yeah.
They might not love soccer, but they love their dogs. So
Yep.
if it gets them to participate in soccer in some way, I'm all for it. Okay.